Hey, what's going on, guys? I figured I'd give a quick little update here into the window of non-strength where we have potential opportunity to look for the market to cool off. Not necessarily top. I'm likely not going to be looking for any sort of top within the market here until December through January OPEX area. Typically, just based on probabilities, that's when we top most of the time, right? You see, last year, our topping process started in November, actually. And then it stretched out into showing a lot of signs on the December OPEX or December FOMC. And then after December OPEX, we kind of trickled lower into the election gap fill, popped higher, and then basically started to find the true decline by March and after February OPEX, right? And a lot of the equity market kind of aligned with that. Same thing over here with NVIDIA, right? You had your gap fill LPSY from that DeepSeek gap in the back test of this June preliminary supply range being on the February OPEX as well. So what we're looking at right now is NVIDIA, and this is kind of the schematic I have. I'll talk about this here real quick. Obviously, we have historically we have bullish positioning that takes over in the December for indexes, and then we have equity OPEX for January, right? So when we're looking at stuff like this taking place, where you're starting to get a slight change of character and a new base built within the chart, right? Obviously, that's a change of character from what the trend was previously, which was just kind of like a straight up line. What I think that all of this is just one big weekly UTAD that is going to solidify itself next year, eventually back under 153. And then when you break 153 and then you back test 153, this will trickle down, and this is going to get a very large reset in terms of valuation, kind of where we finally catch up to fair value. I do think we're in a slight bubble right now, but obviously within a bubble you have very euphoric moments. You have moments where it feels that anything cannot stop. So this is why I brought up the schematic, because it is a change of character. However, if we do bleed lower, we do fill some of these gaps. And then we do put in like a higher low off of 170. We could fall down into 164 and sweep this low. What I think will happen is that I think the holiday rally is going to take over, and it's going to pop this thing up to new all-time highs. I think it will take out probably the 200 cycle, at least into the 190s. And then from there, we'll see where this lands by December OPEX. Which would likely result in a decline that then uses this level as a resistance point to find our LPSY after January OPEX, and potentially, if January OPEX bleeds this into support and creates a path of least resistance, we could see a rally into the February OPEX like we saw after a DeepSeek gap down. It all depends on what happens, but that's just kind of the window that I'm looking for here. When we're looking at the smaller time frame and we're looking at the daily chart right now, this is just an inside bar after news. So we got short over here. I got short on this day right here. And the reasoning why was basically just looking for a lower high right off of this gap fill. We filled the gap, we sold off, we popped back higher. I was looking for one more lower high that could potentially pull this back down into this gap or potentially beneath that gap. But one thing that I did mess up with on this trade was we talked about in my chart section how this was going to be the setup right here. Basically what we were looking for was we were looking for like a really nice up thrust over top of the highs, and then the target to be met back down into this gap fill right here, right? And we did get that. It's just we did not execute that. We were more on the AMD short side when that was taking place. And here we are, guys, with the here we are right here with what I was posting. Um, this right here, NVIDIA Daily, this is the scenario I'm watching, and what it was it was a reclaim of the EMAs. It was a pop to the all-time high, and then a pullback lower, and then the target being met off of this gap fill right here. which was at 171. So we go take a look at 171. That was already met. That was a higher low to the 164 low. We talked about how within the window of the September OPEX, we could see this low right here, this hammer bar, essentially just being the interim bottom for the time being. And it was, right? So this was a higher low. And we could have viewed that as a higher low because we never took out these all-time highs, right? And then what we kind of did was we really didn't show any sort of sign of any seller stepping in, right? And what we did was we claimed the gap, filled the gap, and held the gap, found news off of the gap. This is why I was emphasizing losing 175 for any sort of shorter expiration. Um, I did get 32% on shorter expiration, and I did cut some off of 175. Was looking to trim more off of 175, and as soon as that news hit, I just cut because I figured, this is trading very, very, very like low volume, low action, low volatility. There could be news coming, and what I saw was I did see NVDS, and what NVDS was telling me was that potentially we could have some sort of downside catalyst just because of the amount of volume that was traded here on this weekly time frame here for NVDS. I mean, this is the heaviest volume we've ever seen. Could we get back-to-back super heavy volume um, bars with a reversal bar being put in this week? Yes, and I think if we do, we will revisit the highs on the NVDS, which would be basically for NVIDIA, these September lows. You go to NVIDIA September lows, and it's right towards that 164, right? And I have a 165 strike. Do I think that could go in the money? I don't know. I'm more or less trying to mitigate this as I was talking to you guys about yesterday. We were talking about mitigating the position, right? Because I did have a little bit of room to add, just because this was not holding 175, and I already trimmed some of the shorter expirations, so there was still a slight, small realized win within that trade. However, right, I still, did believe that this could potentially reach 185 one more time again. Um, do I think that they were distributing into the news short term? I do think that that could be the case as of right now. I do definitely have a feeling that this pop is going to get sold off and sold off even more than what it has been today. So what I did was I figured, premium got crushed up into this 185 spot. They slightly swept the 185 spot. What I think they're doing is they're building a path of least resistance for a blow off top from the upside. And then, if this were to pop back down and then pull back higher, pop down to like the 170s, mid 160s, and then rally back its way to the upside, 25 points, maybe 35, 40 points. That would lead to a blow off top through the resistance and a path of least resistance created on the support in the lower extremes of this new range, which I think could be a prolonged distribution period, kind of setting up and catalyzing by that January OPEX, right? So, with all that being said, I don't mind our trade right now. I'm slightly green on the trade right now. We talked about like UNH. This is a fantastic looking chart. I just hold shares of this. I don't feel the need to have options on this. This has been a fantastic shares trade. I still own some forward December calls, kind of just monitoring this weekly time frame and seeing if this wants to breach into the gap and break and base and hold $12. And when that does, I think that this can be smooth sailing all the way up towards $13 by the December time frame there. INTC, fantastic look on INTC. Basically what we're doing is we're holding this mother gap essentially. We did break the creek, and what we're doing here on the weekly time frame is we are breaking through and holding what a previous support turned resistance, then obviously failed to hold as resistance. Very large volume last week, very, very, very large accumulative volume within the entirety of this range, as you guys can see on a perspective of, relative to the last 10 years. So very, very big, big stuff happening over here with INTC. Really excited to see how that one plays out. UNH looks fantastic, holding its gap down as well. Holding its previous resistance, everything together on this, volume patterns, uptick in volume, really dried out volume, got really tight, pressed up against that moving average, and now is finding that momentum again. everything looks good. Everything looks really, really nice. Energy is our rotation that we are looking at, obviously, for the end of the year. And I do think that this one is going to be fantastic. I do believe XLE is going to be reaching a new all-time high in 2026. I will be accumulating DBC within that time period here. And then also, not to mention, guys, we have a few other setups that I would like to look at. I'm interested to see how the Nike earnings report goes. Obviously, this is looking like it could be putting in a higher low on the weekly time frame at any moment. My buddy just mentioned to me, Brent Nelson. I don't know if you guys know him on Twitter. He did just mention to me, big risk reversal come through on McDonald's. I'll pay attention to this just because I do like the discretionary basket right now. Ford is also technically discretionary. A little bit of a lack of momentum through those highs, but yet again, Ford is a very low ATR name. It's not a name where you're going to see many 3% days. I do want to talk about Schwab as well. Banks. Schwab looks pretty bad, and this is pulling right back into its moving averages. It's time to fail right now because it's out of support, previous support. This breakdown period was really aggressive with a lot of volume traded behind it, minus 6% almost on the underlying. And then we had this small little like bear flag breakdown failure, right? So it's pulling back higher, testing into those moving averages, testing into this previous support. And where it started to show signs of potentially distributing were right off of this 2022 high, right? So, I mean, all of this put together, guys, it does look like it's, potentially going to roll over a little bit more. And a target that I would have for a dated short on this, if I do want to enter, would be about 9 points lower, which is a fantastic risk to reward type of trade. Um, Everything else within the Mag 7, it looks like NVIDIA kind of wants to blow off top right through these previous lower highs and potentially into this all-time high. That is a little bit of a stretch, I can't lie. I mean, this is definitely a um, big-time move. It's a 40% move to make a new all-time high on AMD. When you're in a bubble like this, things can definitely do that, and things can stay irrational for much, much longer than we all think, right? So I will be prepared for that. It's kind of somewhat similar to where we had this um, blow off top into this really nasty shooting star candle at the top of the trend with a lot of volume behind it, um, leading into that March quarterly OPEX. So yeah, I mean everything put together here, guys, is definitely setting up for some decent rallies in the holiday time frame here. We have snow as well. Really nice bull peg set up, and it's kind of just resting right off of its moving averages for now. What I would like to see happen here would be previous day low held, probably a break through 232, and basically just a stop off of like 225 to 222. If I were to take this position, we have this previous resistance that's kind of being toyed with for now. Off of around that 230 psych. Momentum above 230, it does look pretty good. Um, we have a big time resistance here as well from the 2024 highs, right? So huge base though on snow. So do I think that this one could break through and then see its continuation? Yeah, 100%. Are there cleaner charts right now that have a little bit cleaner of like a risk level and where we can execute off of? Yeah, 100% as well. DocuSign, really big week for DocuSign. Broke over the creek and back tested this in around August, beginning of August. This is whenever we took our shares position on DocuSign. I'm not really looking at this one so much because it is volatile. There's definitely a possibility for this one to move all the way back up to the interim top that we have here from the December top here. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty volatile. It's looking pretty constructive here on the weekly time frame, as well as the daily time frame. It's just an inside bar set up on the weekly right now. I will say volume patterns are a little bit sketchy right now, and if you did want to take profits on any sort of shares trade, I mean, you're already at a point where you're up 24% with like a risk of just about like 9%. You're well over a 2 to 1 already for this trade if you wanted to realize some profits. So I'm probably not going to be doing that. I'm just going to be watching a few of my other trades for now. Nvidia on this double inside bar or just singular inside bar is also failing. If this were to put in, just as we talked about in NVDS, putting in a weekly reversal bar to the upside, favoring the upside with like some sort of hammer candle, that would probably result in an Nvidia cool off here. And especially if this turned into an inside bar, or I'm sorry, not an inside bar failure, because this was an inside bar and it broke through, and then eventually turning this body red, closing beneath that weekly 9 and almost engulfing the previous week of price action. I mean, we would need from right now into the Friday close about a 6% decline for this thing to look really bad. But if it were to look that bad and pull down that hard, that would be fantastic. That would be a beautiful washout before the holiday flows. And like I said, I'd probably consider taking a position on Nvidia in the 160s, right? I can't chase the highs and speculate. Maybe if this were to set up some really nice inside bars within the September 22nd candle, that suggests that we're going to break through the resistance in a short amount of time, I would consider it. But aside from that, it's just not anything that I really care to look at. I mean, that's pretty much everything that I've covered. UNH really clean, INTC really clean, Ford pretty clean, Snow's shaping up. We got Nike, but they have an earnings report. And then I'll keep my eye on things like McDonald's. There's a distribution on Uber that I'm monitoring right now, but the weekly has not really agreed too much just yet. Really large volume on this breakout. And I do find that breakout a little bit sketch because we're failing the highs again, and most of the volume was actually pretty much sellers. I mean, we did get buyers bouncing back, but I want to see how the highs deal, how the highs do here, and how they deal with the 100 psych, and how it deals with this breakout that occurred last week on the weekly candle close. So. Um, yeah, everything else is going to be delayed until January. XLF, something I'm going to be watching because there's absolutely no progression anywhere within this chart, and it looks like it really wants to fail off of these highs. And if it were to do so, that would probably bring a slight cool down, a really nice cool off here in the market. Obviously, calling for a cool off in the market's pretty tough. It's just because, it's just infinite after buying day by day. Um, so not really much we could do over there with gauging direction clearly in the Mag 7. Um, so yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, but I'm not really watching a ton right now. If I were to be watching a few things, they would probably be very boring trades. They'd probably be very, very boring, like just waiting for Nike to set up a trade, maybe waiting for anything in this discretionary basket to set up a trade like Lulu or McDonald's, or potentially Starbucks being in this base where it could undercut this low, maybe put in like a accumulation range that's worth trading. But I don't really want to touch many underperformers right now. I mean, there's other names other than like bases where they're not proven, um, like UNH and stuff like that. Energy is still one of my top picks, so we will be focusing on the energy. I'm holding Valero shares. I still own positioning for XLE further dated, as well as Oxy. I think all of these charts look pretty good. And then everything else has been really, really, really boring, and nothing's really too worth trading. So um, I'd tread lightly, and I'd wait for the 2-week window of non-strength to pass. Let's get into October and see how things play out.